Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. We're pouring some concrete out right now, and we've got a charcoal gray mix in, integral color. It's actually a Davis liquid color added at the plant. Also, this is a 3000 psi, and I added fiber mesh. We have rebar number 3, 60 grade, which is the better quality steel than the 40 grade. We have that in here. We have a drain system, and we have some valleys and some high points so that everything will slope towards the drains. Now this is about 17 yards of concrete, so we got 2 truckloads coming in here. This is a 4-foot magnesium bowl float with a little rocker arm on it. So all these screed pins, screed boards, overheads are set up to slope towards the drains. So all we have to do is rod off of those and guarantee slope to the drains. So as this concrete cures out, it's going to lighten up a lot, probably about half this darkness right here. Once it's completely cured out, and then it'll probably take a good 60 days. So we're at that time of year where concrete dries slower, so it's going to take a while to get to its real color. Here's some expansion foam that I have attached to the building foundation. I attached that with some liquid adhesive spray glue, 3M, extra strength. There's the 3-inch drain that you can see there. My screed boards go right over the top of those drains, and now we can rod right to them. I think I have about, at any distance, I have about 1.5 inch slope to the drain from all high points. All those drains go out through the curb face in the street, through the side yard. This is going to be 2 pours on this job because we're doing a Royal Ashlar stamp. So we're going to pour the whole back half of this, stamp it out, and then the very next day we'll pour the second half. And the sooner that you can pour, especially when you're dealing with integral color, you don't want to set a month and then pour down the line a month later, because now you're going to have different materials most likely at the plant, which means different colors. So the sooner you can pour them, the better chance you're going to have that the 2 loads dry the same. There's a little 1/2 inch steel that I had extra, so I put that along the perimeter. And then everything else is just a 3/8. I threw a couple 1/2 inch 45 diagonal bars on all the protruding corners of existing structures and stuff. That's a 14-inch wide 1/2 inch radius walking edger that I've modified so that you can turn the handle all the way down. You can add up to 3 poles going down the side of a building or something. Because when you get them, you can't lay the poles down that low because of the steel that's holding the coupling for the pole. So I angle cut those with the grinder so you can lay them all the way down. So we got the first 17 yards down here, and that's going to wrap it up for this pour. And then we got another 7 yards the following day down the side yard. Now all the water's going to come up a lot on this job because we've prepped the soil really well with a lot of moisture. So all the water's going to come up. Because we're doing a pattern stamp, what we're hoping for is that it all dries out uniformly. That way we can just continue our pattern from one side to the other. But if we hit some shaded areas, like you can see here, the shade line along that back side, we'll probably have to stop and go and fall back as it dries out. But here's some of the liquid release we're using. We're using a couple different ones. This was an extra one we had, and then of course I bought a few other gallons just to make sure we had enough. Now right here we're cleaning the mats off, getting any residual color release or liquid color off of the mats, because this is a single color stamp. We don't want to get any of that on the new concrete. So we're going to wipe it all off. We're just going to use the liquid release that we purchased to rub off the excess color off of those mats. That way it doesn't get into the new concrete when we start stamping. Here's your funny trowel. Basically a hand trowel with a pole on it. That's what makes it funny. Now all of those drains that we have, those area drains, I have 4 of them in this pour. I stuffed all those with paper. And the paper that I used was the paper that was containing the fiber mesh that I added to the concrete, because I emptied those out just to make sure the bags, they are supposed to dissolve the bags with the colors and the fiber, but a lot of times they don't. So I dump everything in, and then I have the extra bags that I use to stuff drain holes. And by using the paper, that means the water, surface water, could still drain down those drains while it's drying, and the concrete won't go down. So we can pull the paper out, and then the concrete won't go into the pipes if there's any spillage at all. Now this is just the first pass over the concrete by hand. We're going to do a couple passes before we start stamping. And I believe I have about 16 mats to stamp this with. I have 16 of the Royal Ashlar mats. And they're about 36-inch squares approximately. And the way I ordered the loads were back to back, so they were pretty much batched at the same time. So the idea behind that is that it dries out at the same time, so we can continue the pattern right on through the second load. Now that particular one of those mats, or maybe even 2 of them, are floppies. It's a little different material. They're a lot more bendable. Like when you come up to a vertical wall or anything that's in the way, you can bend them straight up and get texture all the way to the wall. Of course, there'll be a lot of hand chiseling to do to bring the lines into the wall. Just not as much when you use the floppy. We got a 1-gallon sprayer out there. We've got about a 14-inch pounder.
Alright guys, so what we're doing right now is we're starting to stamp out the job. What we did to get a straight line to make sure that the pattern comes out evenly on this whole patio pour is we snapped a string line across these drains, and these drains are lined up perfectly evenly. So we snap the line and we just pretty much start going off of the straight line, and then everything else from that point will be perfectly square, and the pattern will be in sync. And then also another little tip for you guys is once we're stamping, we make sure that no 2 colors are right next to each other, so the pattern is not noticeable and it comes out more natural. So this is an Ashlar slate stamp, and pretty much, yeah, you do a blue, red, yellow, and so on. And we'll show you some shots and then coming up shots in the video.
Okay, so like he was saying, and that was my son on there, that line right there, we just dry snap that into the concrete right over the drains, because those drains we put in square with the house. That way we really don't have to measure anything the day of the pour. All we have to do is drop a line down over the drains, and we know that it's straight. Now we're just checking the offset, because these mats are jogged 6 inches every couple feet. So to make sure it's straight with that line, we're just going to measure in a couple areas. And once we decided they are, we'll just start continuing the stamp. Now we're getting on this a little bit early because we got a long ways to go and we want to get to the end before it's too hard to stamp. If it gets too hard to stamp, you have to hit it so hard that you could actually crack the concrete or you get surface cracks in it. So we got to time this perfectly to get through the whole thing. The nice thing about using a single color and just a liquid release is even if you do start early and you get a couple stickies here and there, you can just trowel them out. So we had a couple areas that stuck a little bit to the mat, and we just carry, at least I carry a trowel with me so I can just wipe them down real lightly to still, that way if you do it lightly, you still you know, you keep the texture there. You just knock the sticky parts down. I have my brother Doug Odell. He's here too, helping stamp on this one. And that's the floppy mat I was talking about. See, it has no handles on it. That one's very bendable, so when you hit a vertical wall, you can bend a good 90 straight up. Now here's your texture mat, where along the edges sometimes because of the old concrete the mats won't go into it, you won't get texture, so you have to touch up along your edges with a hand mat. And the same thing goes with your lines. You have to continue those on out. And that's a 12-inch chisel. It's aluminum, so it's lightweight, easier to carry around. So this was actually the first pour. You notice how we stopped there and we're just working the first concrete truckload right now. And now once we hit this shaded area, we'll have to bail and turn the mats in another direction. And now we'll start heading for the second pour, because the shaded area, even though it's the first pour, it'll dry slower than the second load because it's in the sun. Now there's 3 different mats here. There's 18 out, but there's really only 3 different styles or designs, and they're represented by colors. There's a yellow, there's a blue, and then there's a red. That's all there is. There's 3 different ones, 3 different designs on each one of those patterns. So you don't want to put 2 of the same color next to each other. You actually want to go, you know, every other one a different color. Otherwise you get repetitive mats next to each other. Then it's kind of, you can kind of see them that way. You can rotate them and then it won't be as noticeable, but just something to think about. You try to not keep the same colors next to each other, in other words. So the shaded area went last. It stamped out real evenly throughout the whole job. The texture was really good all the way through. Anyway, thanks for watching. We're going to show some final shots and sealer going on, and probably in the next video or the next one after that. Anyway, if you like these, subscribe, and thanks for watching. Have a good day.